What is the Matrix? Control. Built to keep us under control and to transform us into fuel for the machine. MaxAnte offers you these transmissions as messages for those of you that sense that things are not as they appear. In a worldwide culture under systematic, mechanized, hypnotic obedience, which right now is seeking to take even more control of you and everyone else. We respond by uncovering hidden truths, hacking through the systems, implementing new ways of freedom, and tuning more into joy. If this resonates, you'll feel it inside and know that these messages are for you. If anything doesn't resonate at this time, don't try to make it fit, just let it go. And keep in mind, everything here is paradoxical, not to be taken as literal advice, nor to be taken too seriously, because after all, this is your tour on Earth. Interviewing other people is a great way to expand your understanding of how this world works. Just relying upon your friends and schooling and education, your parents, your teachers, that's not really going to be the best way to ensure your successful experience of joy in this world. So we can research and find out about other people's experiences. Now, you're not going to take on board everything they're saying as gospel. You're not going to say, hey, now they've told me everything, that's how it's going to be for me. But it's certainly going to give you a lot of indicators, a lot of insights into the probabilities, into the possibilities of what can happen in life. So if you're actually thinking about taking some major steps, whatever they might be, make a list of people that have done these and go and interview them. Maybe they're not even available in your town or your city where you are. Maybe you don't know these people, but they're online, and you can go to various forums and you can ask people if they wouldn't mind just answering a few of your questions. So whatever it is, imagine that you're going to go to a new country. Let's say you want to go on a trip to Vietnam. Well, it's going to be wise for you to interview or ask some people, what was it like when they went to Vietnam? But you could start doing this with everything. And so, people who've joined the military, if that's what you're thinking about doing, people who've become a lawyer, if you're thinking about becoming a lawyer, people who are getting married, or people who've gotten married, if you're thinking about getting married, people who've had children, if you're thinking one day about having children, definitely go and interview a spectrum of them. Interview people who are younger, who are still actively involved, people who are older, who've maybe even left that. And don't just interview 2 or 3, maybe even interview 10 people, a dozen people on each of these major topics, especially if it's a major life topic that you're thinking about that could even take up your focus for years or potentially even decades. So if it's something to do with a major life choice or a career, go and interview people. The least that's going to happen is that you're going to become wiser and have more knowledge about that situation. And interview people who've had a great experience with each of these areas. They had a great trip when they went to Vietnam. They've had a great marriage. They've had a great time in the military, an awesome time being a lawyer or whatever it is. And interview other people who had a terrible time. Don't just interview all the people who've got happy stories, and don't just interview all the people who've got miserable stories. Get a balance. And if you can't find one, well, that's going to also tell you something. If everybody's telling you a sad story, go, wow, what's that about? But really see if you can get a balance inside this way of researching. And then along with that, why not just start researching and interviewing people in different age groups? It could be useful to interview people in each of the mids of their life. So people in their mid-20s, people in their mid-30s, people in their mid-40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, maybe even some people in their mid-90s. Make a list of the kind of questions that you would like to know. And maybe they're different for each of the age groups, depending upon how old you are. Presumably you wouldn't need to go and interview people who are younger than you, but who knows, that could even be useful. But this is going to expand your awareness of what people's experiences have been. If you interviewed a dozen people in each of those age groups, you're going to find out a lot of very interesting things about what potentially lies ahead for you. Find out what things that they did that they're really proud of, that they celebrate now. What are the things that they did that they regret, the big mistakes in their life? What would they have done differently? What do they wish that they had known beforehand when they were younger? Ask these sort of questions of people in these different age groups, and you're going to start to build a picture of how to understand the potential likelihood, the probabilities of what the future of this human life could be. Maybe even interview people in different countries, because if you're limited to just the one country where you are, then there could be radically different experiences of life somewhere else. Like, what if you're having a pretty tough time, or maybe just a really boring time in the country, the city where you are, and then you find out later on, wow, there are these amazing countries. That was how it was for me. I spent 40 odd years in Australia. To me, one of pretty much the most boring country in the world. And it wasn't until I discovered, wow, Thailand is just so fantastic. It's so easy. It's so cheap. It's so much fun. And then how about Mexico? Oh my God, this place is insanely magical. There are UFOs flying around the place. There's incredible food. Everybody's fabulous. They've got these open hearts and they're so loving. They're not all stuck and cold like they are in so many other countries. So there are these radically different experiences that you can have. But unless you hear about these other places that you could live and to talk to people there, and then obviously after that, you would need to go and experience it yourself. So it's one thing to have the interviews. It's another for you to go and experience. However, once you've had the interviews, that's going to give you a good setup. You're going to do interviews and as well further research into each of these steps. Make a list of the things that you're thinking about doing next. And if you've already lived for quite a while and you're thinking, well, that's I don't have as many opportunities or possibilities now, that's a load of rubbish. Just really think through this. Do you know that there are children right now, they are, 5 or 6 years old or 10 years old. Do you know that potentially, it's quite possible that in 15 years, you take a 10-year-old right now. So in 15 years' time, when they're 25, there are people who are 25 right now who have made millions of dollars in real estate, millions of dollars on the stock markets, millions of dollars in cryptocurrencies. They've made huge successes and they're only in their mid-20s. But there was a time 15 years ago when they were 10 years old. So if you just extrapolate this idea that basically here you are, maybe you're 30, maybe you're 40, maybe you're 50, maybe you're 60. I don't know how old you are, but you for sure, if you're listening to this, you for sure know a hell of a lot more than a 10-year-old. And so there are 10-year-olds right now who are going to have all those successes. They will have all those dreams fulfilled, quite possibly in about a dozen, 15 years that you wish that you had had in your life. But right now, you know so much more than that 15-year-old. So what is the difference between you and that 10-year-old? So the 10-year-old, you know so much more, or isn't even a teenager. And so if the difference is that they've got the confidence because they haven't had all the knockdowns, the knockbacks, potentially that you might have had, well, that's just something to process and heal. And we've already been talking about different ways that you can do that. So if you are stuck in life, if you are feeling underconfident, if you are feeling that, life has passed you by, they're just not true. They're ridiculous, delusional ways of thinking. Life has not passed you by. It is living through you in this moment right now. And the whole world is open for you to explore and for you to encounter. So I highly recommend that you just get out there, find out what it's been like for other people. How did they make things work? Where did they trip up? What kind of mistakes did they make and how would they avoid them in the future? What do they wish they'd done? And very often it's the people who wish that they'd done more, that they pushed things further because they just wanted to they wish they'd experienced more in life. Well, life is here for you right now because you're listening to this and you're breathing, and the world is here right now for you, and you have a lot more at your fingertips than any child or teenager. So what are you waiting for? Get out there, do interviews, and get inspired because this is your life and it's available for the taking.